So let's take a closer look at student engagement. As educators, we should be contemplating questions like, what drives an individual to work to complete difficult tasks in school and in life? We can also ask ourselves, what is it that we as educators can learn from all the various theories of student motivation engagement? But we also need to be able to understand what is the difference between motivation and engagement. It's helpful to understand that motivation and engagement are two separate but related elements. Motivation being the internal drive, and engagement being what we are actually able to observe. In other words, student engagement refers to students being actively involved in their learning tasks and activities. And for over 20 years, researchers have maintained a strong interest in student engagement and its various functions. For example, we know that higher levels of engagement are associated with improved academic achievement results and lower dropout rates. And we can start to look at the different components of engagement. So one element of engagement is this, behavioral engagement. We look at our students' participation in the different learning tasks as well as the time that it takes to complete the tasks. Another important component is emotional engagement, or students' emotional reactions to the teachers, students, learning, school in general. It also includes their sense of belonging, value, identity, and takes into consideration their level of interest or boredom, happiness or sadness, their anxiety, and other emotions. Finally, there's this element of cognitive engagement, or students' cognitive and self-regulating strategies used by students in their learning process. So when we combine all of these factors, we see this overall definition of student engagement. I'd invite you to study it and seek to put this into your own words. Student engagement represents the capacity and inclination for students to take ownership of their past, present, and future educational experiences by enlisting their cognitive, behavioral, and emotional investment in learning. So please take a minute and try and put that into your own words. What do we mean by student engagement? And as teachers, we want to work with students to become invested in learning in these three distinct ways. By understanding this distinction between students being bored and interested in the subject, and of course seeking to foster interest in learning tasks. Then, behaviorally, understanding this distinction between behavior that is positive and on task versus others that would be off-task, disruptive, or acting out. And cognitively, or understanding the distinction between what is rote learning and what we're trying to foster, which is deeper learning in our students. And a number of studies have said that students will experience academic engagement through feelings of relevance, choice, a knowledge that their work and learning matters and that it's valued by themselves and by others. So our role as educators should be to design learning experiences with these elements in mind. And all of that together is what we mean by student engagement. What is observable on the outside when it comes to academic tasks, in contrast to motivation, which is the internal drive. But remember, motivation and engagement are two separate but related elements. So this seems to beg the question, what can we do as educators to foster motivation and engagement in our students? I wonder if we can find an answer or two by looking at some of the earliest archaeological evidence we have of humans here on this continent. This was uncovered in Mesoamerica, ancient Mexico and Guatemala. It was found when archaeologists and anthropologists were studying ancient fishing villages. They found mounds and mounds of shells, as well as structures that were used for shelter. And underneath and nearby, these circular depressions were found in the mud. If you look at this one right here, as well as this one seen from the top view, could you take a guess as to what the archaeologists and anthropologists uncovered? What is this that they found? Turns out this is evidence that ancient man played games. If you look at these little circles that move around this direction and think of some board games such as Sorry or Marbles, these chase games where you roll the dice and move your piece around the board and try to get home first. Evidence that thousands of years ago, men and women were working to do two things. First, to survive, and second, to play games, suggesting to us that we as human beings are wired for two things: learning to survive and playing. So to better understand student motivation and engagement, we could try to compile a framework of fun. In other words, studying and learning through and from games. So here's a quick picture of the members of my family. They all come from the same gene pool but have their slight differences in appearance, likes, dislikes, and especially the types of games that each of us like to play. Some of us really enjoy the competitive aspect of soccer. Others in my family really enjoy card games. A few of us get together often to play spike ball. Several of us gravitate towards video games. And about half of us really enjoy playing word games. Now, despite our different preferences, we all enjoy games. And this is because all games are built from certain mechanics. Games in all their varieties tend to have things in common, such as levels, an activity that's fun, active, and immersive. They provide points or some sort of reinforcement and feedback. Games allow us a certain degree of freedom and control, and we're deeply invested in whatever problem we're trying to solve. So why not study games and seek to put these elements or mechanics to use in our own classrooms? So let's imagine one of our future students. He or she could be really invested in playing video games at home, using lots of time, energy, and resources, even money, to get the latest upgrades or the newest game, and persist for hours in solving difficult problems. Why is it that some of these same students come into our classrooms and their countenance completely changes the moment we talk about math or English language arts or a particular learning task? A student becomes reluctant and even saddened to be in our class. So what if, regardless of the skill or concept we're trying to teach, we seek to provide our students with real-world, engaging, challenging problems, just like games do? It wasn't too long ago that one of my sons saw his 4th grade science teacher rounding up a bunch of boxes of old science equipment in preparation to throw them away. When he asked what they were, the teacher told him that they were old rocketry kits. Some of them were broken, some of them were missing pieces and parts, but he begged and begged to be able to take all of those home. He laid out all the pieces, parts, looked up some videos on YouTube about basic rocketry, and was able to piece all the necessary parts together for a rocket launch. He did this over and over again. As I watched him, I saw him start to run back and forth from his rocket to this crate of extra supplies, and wondered what it was that he was doing. As I looked more closely, I saw that he was filling up the nose cone incrementally with steel BBs, which sounds pretty dangerous and a little bit foolish. When I asked him about it, he said, "I'm just going to slowly make it a little bit heavier and heavier to see what happens." And what happened was the rocket flew lower and lower and eventually took off, but just kind of hovered right above the ground, flipped upside down, and crashed. Now, you think that the crash of a rocket would be a failure, but in this case, it was what? It was a success. It was a problem to be explored and to be solved. As teachers, we should seek to provide these types of experiences to our students, regardless of our content area or age group. Learning experiences that incorporate as many of the elements of games as possible. Because remember, we are wired for 2 things, learning and for playing. And the more often that we blend these 2 together, the more engaged our students become. So the first way that we can blur the lines between learning and playing is through gamifying or gamification. The second way is to use more serious games for learning. And a third way is actually to engage students as game designers. So let's take a look at each of these in more detail. Gamifying is where we take a difficult or challenging task that we're asking students to do and make it look, sound, and feel like a game. Here's an example I came across recently. My wife and I were in the Walmart checkout line when one of our sons ran up and said, "Hey, can I have some change? I want to go save a child's life." We looked at him confused and puzzled, but said, "Okay," and gave him some spare change. He returned 30 seconds later asking for even more change. Now, you need to understand that we're the type of parents that don't like to give our kids change at the checkout at Walmart so they don't blow it on junk in those machines that sit in the lobby. But our son's enthusiasm interested us, so we gave him a little bit more change and then watched him closely. He sprinted down a few aisles and saw him try and throw it up and into this umbrella that says, "Toss a coin and help save a child's life." With each coin, he stepped a little bit further and further back until eventually he was launching coins over passing customers and getting much of his change in the umbrella, but occasionally bonking somebody on the head or hitting their cart. So how do we get people who are reluctant to part with spare change to donate it to somebody else? You make it look, sound, and even feel like a game. One place to start is with game-based templates that are provided at sites like classtools.net, where all you need to do is have a study guide with answers. You can copy and paste it into one of the templates at classtools.net, and it will provide a variety of different games that can be played by your students to review. You can also use gamified formative assessment tools to check for students' understanding, as well as to have opportunities to practice and to review. Each of these tools uses its own combination of leaderboards, points. The kids get to choose a name and an avatar and keep track of their progress compared to that of their peers. In other words, we've gamified an activity such as a review or a quiz. I'd like to invite you to watch this teacher put multiple elements of games to work into his classroom and ask yourself, how could I put this to practice into my own class?
Hello, my name is Mr. Anderson, and my classroom is a video game. I can't think of a better way to start a story than Alice falling down the rabbit hole, and she comes upon a bottle, and the bottle says simply, "Drink me." And so I'm a teacher, and so I wanted to try to recreate that. And so what I did is I left my computer in my class, and I had Angry Birds on it, and then I had a card next to it, and it simply said the word play. And then I walked away. But I wanted to see what would happen. And so I left the webcam on. And so I've got a little video of the kids as they come into class. And so would you like to see that? Yeah, as if you have an option. Yeah. I love how they took turns. And I love Jackson's eyes, if you watch him. Yes, success. And so that look in his eyes, that look of learning and trying something new and failing and trying it again, is something that we aspire to see in the eyes of our kids. And we don't do that. A lot of the time it's glazed over look. And so I wanted to try to apply some of these dynamics into my classroom. So I grew up in the 1980s playing video games, and these video games taught me lessons that I think we could apply in schools today. The first thing I learned is that video games are fun, and school should be fun as well. Unfortunately, most kids wouldn't say their typical day is fun. However, there are elements of school that all students love. They love seeing their friends, and they love learning. Unfortunately, they spend most of the day just passively sitting in front, listening to a teacher lecture. So I think school should be fun. Second thing I learned is that failure is okay. If it takes you 80 times to clear the third elevator stage in Donkey Kong, that's okay. Failure is simply part of the learning process. However, in schools, we tend to stigmatize failure. You don't get to take a quiz over and over and over again until you finally pass it. In fact, failure of individuals, and right now, failure of schools, is highly stigmatized. And so I think we need to send a message that failure is okay. The third thing I learned is the importance of leveling. This could be applied in schools in two ways. When a teacher decides to move at a specific pace, that's okay for some of the students in their class, but some of the students are automatically going to be bored, and some of the students are quickly going to be confused. And so I think that students should be able to move on their own pace through a mastery system where they master a level and then they can move on to the next one. They also should be able to level up, becoming more powerful as they learn new material in the class. I also think that we give the wrong lecture at the beginning of the year. And I used to give this lecture at the beginning of the year. I would say, you all have an A. From this point forward, you will fall precipitously until you eventually land at your final grade. No game would ever be designed this way. And so one of the great things about being a teacher is that you get summer break. And summer break is great because you get a break from school, but you also can reinvent your class, make it something that has never been before. And so if you try to do that during the year, if you try to make radical changes, the kids will just simply be confused. But if you change it during the summer, you can make huge sweeping changes in your class, and the kids will never know what hit them. And so this was my dream. I wanted to reinvent my class as a video game. But I didn't want the kids to just sit in front and watch a video game like Oregon Trail or Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I wanted to take the most compelling elements of gaming and then apply it in the classroom. This took a lot of work. And so I had to create a class. It's called Biohazard 5. It's got a narrator. It's got a narrative. All the kids come together there. I've created about 100 video podcasts that take them through the lecture. And so when they get that point, they can kind of learn. I have all these special activities. So in class, the kids can apply the material that we're learning in the real world. I have a bunch of inquiry labs. This one right here is a photosynthesis lab. You can see my students very riveted. They're studying photosynthesis right on using little chads that we cut out of a leaf. I've developed hundreds of questions, and I have a mastery system where the students can take quizzes over and over and over again until they finally get it. I have a leveling system, so they start with 0 experience points at the beginning of the year. I borrowed this from Lee Sheldon at University of Indiana. So basically, they come in on day 1. I invented the bottom level as primordial soup because I teach biology. And so they gain experience points, and they can move their way up to like Dumbo Octopus and Mountain Gorilla and maybe Grand Master at the end. I also have a leaderboard. So they play with an avatar, and they can see how they're doing in the class, how they're doing against everybody else. This is the most popular resource in the class. Kids are constantly logging in to see how they stack up. I also got to pilot a classroom set of iPads, and so kids had an internet-connected device at all times. And so finally, the summer was over, and I stood in front of the class, like this apparently, and I said, "Hello, my name is Mr. Anderson, and my class is a video game." If you were to come in, you would find kids reading, watching videos, applying, doing special activities, trying to solve challenges, working together or working alone. And so it's a really neat, I had a teacher come, and we were just talking about halfway through the class, and he said, "What you've created is like a shop class." Because he was a shop teacher at once, and he said, so as a shop teacher, you teach them some skills, and then the kids can apply that. And so it's like that.
So here we have an example of a teacher who has gone to great lengths to make his classroom look, sound, and feel like a game. And we might not start with all of those game-based elements, but we can start somewhere to build in a few game elements to help foster a little bit of motivation and engagement in our students, so that we blur that line between learning and playing. That is what we mean by gamifying. The next step is to actually use serious games to help our students learn and master concepts and skills. You see, often as teachers, we ask ourselves this: how can I get my students to learn this? Maybe a better question would be, how can I get my students to experience this? And we can do this by incorporating serious games. Let's look at how one university professor sought to develop and utilize a serious game with his students to introduce, teach, and reinforce essential concepts in his anthropology class.
So here's how it works. You have 200 students, and they're divided into 16 different groups. Each group gets a box of resources, which might include marshmallows, straws, or rubber bands. They need all 3 to create marshmallow-tipped straw arrows that they use to defend themselves or shoot over the creek to score points.
You're just like hanging out on the side of the...
We are a self-sufficient country.
But there's also another economy at work.
Oh my goodness, this is so scary.
Europeans in blue, red, and green score points by gathering these same items and creating marshmallow necklaces.
Two of us stay at the bridge, because they are coming.
The Europeans have marshmallow blowguns. If you get hit with a marshmallow, you have to freeze for 100 seconds. This gives the Europeans enough time to control your land and take your resources.
Gotcha!
Once you're colonized, your options become limited. Most become propertyless, low-wage laborers, making necklaces for the Europeans, but it's tough to make a fair wage.
Or we're keeping the bracelet for ourselves.
We could just shoot you. That's true. You have nothing.
As resources run low, others become desperate.
Yeah, we keep some straws, dodging bullets.
You're running out of straw. You can't find straws.
No one else has straws.
Really? There's one more group.
Straws.
No one has straws, Colin.
Dang. What do we got for straws up on the hill?
They're out too.
Everything. Take me with you.
What's that? You guys want to go with them? You're desperate? You need a job? What happened here?
So
We're taking us abroad.
They were paid something?
They paid us a marshmallow to have part of our contract.
Oh, okay.
To work for them.
It's a slave trade essentially going across right here. Like these people have actually been bought and they're coming over to work. Run!
Get it, girl!
Stop! We'll give you stuff! We will give you stuff! Fair trade! Fair trade!
Hold on! We're gonna work this out!
Oh goodness, there's war. Oh my gosh, look at this. Green went and attacked red at home. Blue did too. Oh, the troops are gathering.
I don't like this.
Goodness, look at this. Everything is shut down. The world is coming to an end. There are no resources left.
Now, how do we put this to use in our own classrooms? We look for learning goals that lend themselves to the use of simulations and other forms of serious games. Wasn't too long ago, I was approached by a science teacher who said, I'd really like to put this serious games idea into practice in my classroom. We looked at his upcoming unit and found this learning goal. Students were to identify, analyze, and synthesize factors contributing to predator-prey relationships. So we developed a game, a form of tag and chase that would be played in the grounds around his middle school. If a student was assigned to be prey, he would have a bright green headband on. His or her goal would be to get a water band by getting to the water area and picking up a blue rubber band that they would put around their wrist, go out into the surrounding grass area and find a green rubber band to put around their wrist to show that they were able to get food, and then safely get over to the spawning zone where they could pick up a red rubber band. All of this had to be done without getting caught by a predator. The predator's job was to get a water band from the watering spot, catch the prey as they ran around, as well as get to the spawning zone and get a red band for that. After every 3 minutes of play, the teacher would blow a whistle, the kids would pause and tally how many predators and how many prey were remaining. They would also note any observations they saw in the way that the predators or the prey were behaving and interacting. After multiple rounds of the game, they got together in their groups and examined their data and their findings. As we walked around the classroom, we heard students say things like, it seemed that the individuals who were prey that were the fastest definitely survived the longest, as well as the individuals that really were able to camouflage themselves. In fact, we even had students coming to the second day of gameplay in their own camouflage and ghillie and hunting suits. A number of the students observed that the predators figured out very quickly that all they needed to do was hang out by the watering spot in order to more easily catch their prey. And as they charted and analyzed their data, they saw this pattern or trend that when the prey went up, the number of predators came up. As the number of predators came up, then the number of prey went down. Each team then synthesized and presented their findings, presenting and justifying their hypothesis with the data that they had collected. This is an example of using serious games. This teacher wasn't satisfied with just asking, how can I get my students to learn this? He asked, how can I get my students to experience this? He accomplished it by utilizing a serious game aligned to the learning goal for his instructional unit. That's what we mean by serious games. We can also look at our students as game designers by inviting them to demonstrate knowledge and mastery of concepts as they develop and present games designed to teach others certain concepts. For example, here is a student-created game towards the end of a reduce, reuse, and recycle unit. The student used very simple materials to design a game board with a start all the way up to a finish. Each player uses the spinner being made out of a paper plate, a brad, and then a paper clip. Question cards were developed to ask players to think about the different concepts related to reducing, reusing, and recycling. And the game pieces themselves were made from popsicle sticks, folder clips, and small fluffy balls that were glued on top for hair. Students can also be asked to use digital tools to design games. Free programs such as Scratch and Tinker allow students to do basic coding to design video games. Minecraft, Fortnite, and other 3D designing environments can also be used to make full-size three-dimensional models and representations of what is being learned. But regardless of what level of game use we employ in the classroom, we can seek to incorporate a few or many elements of games in order to help students be more motivated and more deeply engaged in difficult, challenging learning tasks.